Applied Magic by Dion Fortune. Narrated by Matthew Schmitz. Nine. A Magical Body. James Branch Cabell has a story of the dull, ordinary Felix Keniston, who makes for himself an imaginary personality called Horvendile, through whom he experiences high adventure. Such play is common with children, but the shades of the prison house close around most of us, and a field of fascinating experience and experiment is lost just when it is becoming fruitful. In the vicarious imaginings of film and novel, we find a substitute for the creations of our own imagination that we are too dull or too self-conscious to trust any longer. When the girders of the mind are unloosed in psychopathic states, the creative imagination produces strange things for our undoing. It may terrify us with phantasms of the primeval past, or turn us into lotus eaters neglectful of reality. When the nuclear consciousness retains control, the same destroying element in the psyche can be disciplined into creation through art forms, so sophisticated and stylized that their original content is hardly discernible, save when it is working on the traditional material of myth and folklore. Through this connecting link, we can trace the relationship between the creative imagination of the artist and the technique of the adept, who uses myths as his formulae. Both are working with the same level of the subliminal mind, and each has something of the other in him. Perhaps the degree of creativeness in either branch of art or magic depends on the proportion in which the other is present. There is a technique in the repertoire of the adept by means of which he builds himself just such a vehicle of experience as Cabell made his dreary hero create in the imaginary personality of Horvendile. Equipped with such an instrument formed out of such stuff as dreams are made of, we can enter the dream world of the astral plane and act out therein a dramatic representation of our subliminal lives. Whether this be good for mental health or not depends upon the degree of good sense we bring to it. The escape from reality into fantasy may be a dangerous psychological device, but a holiday from reality may have much to recommend it in the shape of compensation and refreshment. But if the inner planes be indeed the planes of causation for this world of form and matter, the results of such expeditions may be far-reaching, for we may set in motion all manner of subtle influences whose effects will ultimately reach our realm of time and space in ever-widening circles. Such enterprises are not to be despised, and patient and bold experimentation may yield results well worth the effort and risk, if risk there be. Personally, I think there is little or none for the well-integrated personality that understands the psychology of the proceeding. No more risk, in fact, than is attached to any other work of the creative imagination, to which one trusts oneself. The house may fall upon the bad architect, or the bridge collapse under the incompetent engineer, or any other work of human genius blow up and slay its maker, if it be in its nature to explode. But we do not for that reason abandon the work of mechanical invention as too risky to be a justifiable field of human endeavor. So here are some notes on the subject of such experiments. Tentative, for the work is in its early stages, but useful perhaps as throwing light on obscure aspects of the human mind, normal as well as abnormal. I had long been familiar with the method of going forth by night in the Horvendile body, but was unable to practice it successfully until I was given my magical name. The magical name, whether given by the teacher or discovered by oneself, seems to be an important point in the process of the formulation of the Horvendile body. It appears to play the same part as the grain of sand plays in the formation of the pearl. The psychology of the uses of the magical name needs more study than I can give it at the moment without digression. It must suffice to say that its uses are traditional, and I have proved its efficacy in practice. Like most people of vivid imagination, I am no stranger to the indulgence in flights of fancy, wherein I am the center of romantic adventures in my own person. Like most fiction writers, I have put something of myself into my characters, but the creation of a magical personality is a different matter. For if it is to be of any value, it must be in every way greater than oneself, and how can the pan be more than the whole that gives rise to it? The problem is apparently solved by going back into the past of our evolutionary history to a period when the intellect had not obliterated the primitive levels of consciousness, and using the mind of today to direct the subliminal activities. It is, in fact, the method of the psychopath reversed, for in his case it is the primitive levels that rise up and flood the conscious mind, usurping the throne of the nucleus of consciousness. It may be that the use of the magical name has some relationship to the process of going back into a time past and reawakening to the mode of consciousness of a phase of development long outgrown. Primitive names are imitative names or descriptive phrases, and so the barbarous syllables of the magical names may serve to awaken memories in the far-wandering soul. We cannot unfold in evolution that which was not infolded in involution. We forget that a phase of preparation must precede all manifestation. We possessed powers in the primitive phases of our development, which have had to be sacrificed in order to achieve the higher powers of the human mind. If, while retaining these powers, we can recover the lost secrets, we have the means of fashioning a Horvendile consciousness that shall transcend the limits of its creator, for we have added the past to the present, or if another terminology be preferred, we have extended consciousness into the realms usually occupied by subconsciousness. In my own experience of the operation, the utterance to myself of my magical name led to the picturing of myself in an idealized form, not differing in type, but upon an altogether grander scale superhuman, in fact, but recognizable as myself, as a statue more than life-size, may yet be a good likeness. Once perceived, I could repicture this idealized version of my body and personality at will, but I could not identify myself with it unless I uttered my magical name. Upon my affirming it as my own, identification was immediate. Consciousness transferred itself to the form thus visualized, and I stepped forth into the world of dreams naked. Upon that nudity, as of an antique statue, I could, by a simple act of the imagination, put on whatever robes or drapery I desired to symbolize the part I wished to play. The subconscious level of the mind was built up while humanity was upon the astral plane, while coming down the involutionary arc into immersion into matter, and the subconscious mind still retains its astral methods of mentation, which are in terms of emotional values and pictorial images. And it is by obtaining an understanding of the workings of the subconscious mind that we can best appreciate the workings of the elemental consciousness. Equally, it is by recovering access to the subconscious levels of the mind that we become able to function upon the astral plane. It is for this reason that impressions of the astral realms are always greatly confused by the admixture of subjective subconscious elements. The average human subconscious mind in civilized communities is mainly subjective, but the average human subconscious in primitive races is largely objective as well. That is to say, it is conscious of its astral environment, hence the prevalence of magic among primitive peoples, for they are natural magicians. The occultist, in the course of his training, learns to extend the threshold of consciousness once more into the subconscious mind. But whereas in primitive humanity the mentality ended with subconsciousness, in the evolved man, the powers of the operation of the subconscious astral faculties. Initiation into the astral plane means more, however, than the exploitation of these psychic powers. The astral plane is the plane of control for the great reservoir of etheric energy, and when we obtain the right of entry upon the astral plane, we also obtain access to and control of the etheric subplanes of the physical plane. It is from these subplanes that the vital forces of physical organisms are derived, and it is contact with these great natural reservoirs of force which gives the peculiar magnetic quality so noticeable in souls who have the elemental contacts. The contacts of the green ray are also spoken of as the Celtic initiation, and for this reason, the initiations which were worked by the Greeks and the Druids were of the upper astral, in contradistinction to the initiations of an earlier epoch, which were initiations of the lower astral, as witnessed the terrible deities of Akkad and Babylon. The Greeks with their art and the Celts with their music and dance were the true initiates of the green ray, and the influences of the astral contacts can be clearly seen to this day in the temperament of the Celtic races. The green ray is essentially the ray of the artist, for it is the subconscious or astral mind which is the creative factor in the arts, and according to the proportion of this mentation which prevails is the degree of inspiration. Technique is of the conscious human mind, but the true creative artistic impulse is of the ancient astral mind, of the race which lies hidden below the threshold of superimposed consciousness. Without the technique so painfully acquired by the discipline of hand and eye, there can be no manifestation in the matter of creative astral impulse. There are many such who, having the astral contacts, cannot reduce them to the forms of the physical plane. These tend to get drawn off that plane and over into the astral, and we see them in those extremes of the artistic temperament which tend towards mental unbalance. Equally, there are certain types of insanity and certain symptoms in several insanities of purely physical origin, which can be explained in the light of our knowledge of the astral realm, for just as there are certain drugs of the hashish variety which artificially open the psychic centers to the perception of the astral, so there are certain toxic conditions of the blood which act in the same way, and this explains many of the hallucinations of the insane who are really experiencing a pathological psychism and seeing about them the denizens of the astral, and also their own thought forms with which their own auras teem. Psychology explains the latter phenomena quite satisfactorily, but it does not understand the former and has recourse to far-fetched explanations in order to bring it into line with the previous class of phenomena which it is able to account for satisfactorily. The psychology of insanity is able to throw light upon many of the phenomena of psychic experience, and this is said in no derogatory spirit, but because it is the simple truth, for the hallucinations of insanity are a type of astral phenomena which have been worked out in the light of modern science. Many other aspects await that process for their elucidation, and when science, and especially the sciences that deal with the human personality, both mental and physical, realize the function and nature of the astral influences working in and upon dense matter, a great step will have been taken and a new era of scientific discovery opened up. At the present moment, we are hovering upon the eve of this realization as a drop of water hangs on the lip of a beaker. When the force of gravity overcomes capillary attraction, the flow will commence. When there is a realization of the invisible, imponderable realities, a new era of scientific discovery and therapeutic achievement will open up. It is a lack of this realization which is baffling science at the present moment and rendering abortive such lines of research as the investigation of cancer and the endocrines, both, as the occultist knows, so intimately connected with the astral plane. We may well ask why any serious student of occultism, and none others are wanted in the mysteries, should seek the contacts of the green ray in the present age, when both the Hermetic and Christian contacts are open to him. The Hermetic student seeks them in order to complete his initiations, so that he may be able to bring the powers down the planes to their final manifestation on the physical plane. Especially is this contact necessary to him if he be also an esoteric therapeutist, for the processes of both disease and repair are intimately associated with astral conditions, which influence conscious directly and the physical body indirectly through their effect upon the etheric double. The esoteric therapeutist must therefore of necessity have the contacts of the astral plane.